welcome. Can you introduce yourself for my listeners, please?
Yeah, I'm Emily Ratajkowski. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so for someone who's never heard of you, maybe isn't familiar with your work, how do you describe it at this point in your career?
Like if somebody on the street is like, so what do you do? Or like at a party and they don't know who I am, I'll just be like, oh, I actually like I just wrote a book that came out. The paperback just came out. You should buy it. And then I'll be like, and I have a podcast I just started. That's what I do.
Okay, so that's what. So do you feel like you leave out kind of the fashion stuff?
I do, just mostly because I wouldn't if somebody was like actually asking me, like, what do you really do? But I just in general in small talk I do, just because I don't want to like get into. I hate when people are like, where might I have seen you? And then I have to like list clients or something, or you know what I mean? Yeah. No,
awkward.
I don't do that.
Or like someone's hitting on you and they do that.
Yeah, no, I hate that. That's why I'm like, even at customs, like I just came back from Europe and they obviously like, what are you doing there? And I said I was modeling, and the guy was like, I could have guessed. And I was like, thank you so much. And then he was like, who do you model for? And I was like, fuck, I don't want to play this game. I just got off a 9-hour flight.
Yeah, and you're like, I have probably also been navigating that since you were a young woman.
Yeah,
it's just part of, I think, being an attractive woman as well.
Just like trying to like cut off conversations while also still being somewhat polite.
And also when people are asking you things that you're just like, fuck off, but you can't be a fucking asshole about it. I want to talk about this idea and critique of a sexy woman. And I think it's particularly interesting between both of us because I think I don't know if you're familiar with some of my stuff, but we post like similar material online. And so I feel like I myself have been critiqued in this way, although on a really minute level compared to you, that women can't have both. They can't be sexy and intelligent. You can't be a feminist and post revealing photos. And the two are mutually exclusive. What is your response when people say that to you?
I mean, the idea that women can't be multifaceted or multidimensional is like sexism, basically. I think for me, when it comes down to like my image and my experience and kind of these like, you know, what people see as contradictory parts, that's why I wrote my book, right? To like explain the nuances of my experience as somebody who's commodified my image and body and benefited off of that. I think we live in a world where women can get ahead and get more attention by being sexual. I think that there can also be joy in that. It can be like just a self-expression. It can be whatever, but I think ultimately like it's not just about validation, it's about survival. That's been my experience. And, you know, whenever I kind of talk to people about this, I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, I could have like lived a different life and not been a model and not posted what I did on Instagram to build the following I did, whatever. But I probably wouldn't have gotten the book deal I had and had as many people pay attention to my book. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. So I feel very like pro women doing whatever they want to kind of accept the reality of the world we live in. And that means hustling the system, essentially.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's shifted? Your views on this have shifted since the beginning of your career to now?
Totally. I mean, that's kind of like why I wrote the book, was because a lot of the things that I said when I was 21 and just became famous and was famous for being like naked, basically, they changed so much. My experience changed so much. It was like in my mid to late 20s, a bunch of things happened in my life. And I just kind of had this moment where I was like, wow, I'm not happy. Like, this isn't what I want for myself. Even though I have like fame and money and attention and all these things that like are really important in our culture. And like, I think a lot of young women want and hope for, this doesn't like make me feel fulfilled. And what does that mean about how I see, you know, success and power, even really power ultimately?
Well, what I liked about the book is I feel like it's more open-ended. You didn't write it saying these are the answers, this is how I see it. It's kind of like you're constantly evolving and your ideas of femininity and sexuality is shifting.
Yeah.
And I think about even in my own life, like as we get older, as we age as women, like it's constantly shifting. And I think about things that I used to post when I was younger that I thought were really empowering them. Then I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I feel the same way anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the word empowerment now. It's crazy. Like, I'll do anything to avoid saying it. I think it's just been kind of used in this way that's, I'm like, what does empowerment mean? What does that mean? What does empowering mean? And this is like a joke that I brought up with my friend Z-Way, and then we used it for her show because I was like, I don't even know what that fucking means. And then you look it up and it's like a feeling. Like a lot of women, you describe this word as like a feeling they get. And it's like, the fuck does that mean? Because, you know, our whole world like is about power. Like everything is based off power. And then, you know, you talk about like what's empowering and what's not. And it's like wearing a thong or like taking the picture or not taking the picture, posting the picture, not posting the picture, whatever. I like prefer to talk about control over empowerment, whatever. But yeah, definitely God, yes. Like what my, I mean, just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. There's nothing I like regret posting or anything like that.
Yeah, you kind of just acknowledge how it's led you to where you are now.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like that. Yeah, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, you're like,
I secured myself a future and
Totally.
a career that then I was able to pivot into things that I actually really like and care about.
Yeah, it's very obvious to state this, but like we live in a patriarchal capitalist society where I feel like men are almost born objectifying women, or they're taught to. And women are taught to objectify themselves in this way. But at a certain point, do you feel like you play into that?
Totally.
And, you know, it's one thing to play the game and come out on top financially, which I think about a lot. Even, you know, you're talking about you have this book deal and a podcast that probably came from these followers, from posting certain material. But at what point are we liable for perpetuating like harmful stereotypes? And do you ever think
totally
about that?
I think about it all the time. I mean, I think about it like not only with what I post, but just like how I get dressed. I'm like, okay, so if I'm choosing to wear this shirt and this outfit, like am I appealing to this, you know, male gaze, this idea? I mean, just even like how you do your makeup. Obviously like all of those things are micro and very small, but every woman goes through them. Mine just are like on a much bigger stage. This is like something that I think about when it comes to politics in general. Like, how do we actually, I have a lot of beliefs that, you know, are about, that I fundamentally like kind of don't necessarily believe, like people's personal, how they act in their everyday is going to change the way the world works. I just don't always see that. I don't believe that. Like, I feel like when we talk about capitalism or we talk about the environment, it's like, the system has to change. It's like racism, right?
100%.
You know,
it's not the individual.
Yes. And I think that what I have seen so much of is, and you look at sort of what even the conversations we are having around like Britney Spears and Pamela Anderson and women in the past, where we're like looking back and we're like, oh, we all slut shamed her and called her stupid and like whatever, didn't take her seriously once when she was objectifying herself, whatever. And then once she like rebelled, you know, whatever, like there's so many. And I'm just like, I guess what I feel, and this is not an excuse, but this is, I don't have an answer basically for you. I don't have an answer, but I've just noticed that we are so ready to criticize these women in general. Like even on TikTok, you go on and you see these like young girls like dressing a certain way, and whenever there's girls in the comments and women in the comments being like, why are you like you're so pathetic, so cringe, like for like needing this validation, for appealing to men, blah, 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 whatever. And then there's all these men like calling them sluts and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but then the video has like 500,000 views. And it's like, I just feel that it ends up being the way we, actually Andrea Long too is this writer I really like, said it the best. She was like, I'm going to paraphrase and totally butcher it, but she said like, feminism can be this just like incredible mirror in which other women judge each other and like place blame, which is just like so ironic, obviously, and the antithesis of what you want for feminism. But I have seen that not just with myself, but with other women, like the way we even talk and criticize women in public spaces who've gotten plastic surgery. Like there's just so much blame placed on women for their actions. And it's like, yes, we do need to be held accountable, but like, why don't we talk about the overall structure and system and focus on that rather than like blaming a attractive young woman for like working what is just reality, basically.
Yeah, and being a victim to us, like they're also victims of this greater system.
Yeah, victim is such a difficult word for me, but yes, I think that they are, their actions are a consequence of like of
the environment.
Yes.
Yeah, I did an episode on like body positivity, wellness culture like a week ago, and this was a lot of our discussion. It's like at a certain point, you know, she was saying, I don't blame the people who post the before and after photos of working out. I blame like why did they get to the point to do that?
Yeah, totally. I think just you know, I do think personal is political, whatever, but I think like the left in general has this like focus on like really small kind of like actions that like people can take that doesn't actually feel like effective and progressive to me in a lot of different ways. And when I talk about women and feminism, I feel the same way. Like, can we not like blame a fucking 17-year-old for posting a whatever, or a 30-year-old for like we all are, you know, this is a real commodity in a marketplace, basically.
Yeah, and I think there's nuance, and as long as you talk about it openly and you're like, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I'm playing into a game that is helping me survive.
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do with the book, and just like by having the conversations I'm having in general on the podcast and whatever, is be really honest about the nuance of my experience. And like, you know, I thought I was this like amazing hustler basically in my early 20s, and was like, yeah, I'm like working it and doing it, you know, in the ways that I felt comfortable, whatever. But time and time again, I was like completely disrespected, violated, made to feel like shit basically. And it totally wore on my self-worth and my mental health. And so, you know, I want to be clear, like, I don't think that this is some kind of like correct way to go about living your life. Like, it wasn't being objectified, and objectifying myself didn't do wonderful things for me completely. It did sad. There were benefits, and then there were also serious drawbacks.
Do you want to talk about some of those mental health implications? Yeah,
I mean, I didn't even really realize I had them. I was like, I would have like triggers, basically, just like, you know, this kind of classic story of somebody who like hasn't gone to therapy, and would have these really crazy triggers around like very strange things, usually around like men in powerful positions. But that could be like that could be like somebody in a friend group that like, not necessarily like powerful men, but just like, you know, in dynamics where they had some kind of authority. And it would just like, I don't know, I would just have a lot of outsized reactions. And it wasn't until I started going to therapy that I was able to like process, you know, what had basically started happening to me when I hit puberty. So like 12 on, and all these experiences I'd had, seeking validation from men, and how like painful that was for me, and how much I abandoned myself in those situations.
Was it in the form of feeling like rejected, or sacrificing your values to kind of appeal to the insecurities?
I think it was just like sacrificing myself in general. Like, I just didn't consider myself.
Yeah.
I didn't consider what I wanted ever.
Yeah, there's a lot of young women who listen to the show. And I mean, it's crazy that I'm hearing that from you, you know? I'm sure they listen, and it's like, you're the contemporary ideal, like sexiest woman. And to hear that you also have had moments of feeling insecure.
Oh my God, I have them still. I'm like, it's crazy. Actually, I like wrote this whole book and like talked about, you know, losing my virginity like without consent, and all these like really traumatic experiences, you know, throughout, that some are related to modeling, but honestly a lot aren't. And I still find myself circling back to the same things in therapy, even though I did all this work to process everything and like made art out of it even, you know? And that's a tough reality for me. I'm 31. I have a child. Like, I did all these things. I feel like I've done the work, and I still find myself like, especially like I'm newly single, whatever, and I'm entering these dynamics where you're kind of like creating new boundaries with new people all the time, like constantly. And I find myself like being 15 again, and it's so crazy. So I think it'll be a lifelong battle, basically.
Yeah. Do you feel like modeling or just being on social media specifically has exacerbated some of these insecurities?
It's so hard to say. You know, when I was in high school, Instagram didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So there wasn't the same like, you know, constant, but there was like, it was just came in different forms. So that's kind of like my thing whenever I hear people talk about like the dangers of social media. I'm like, totally 100%. But like, you know, those if you talk to my mom, who was born in like 1952, she'll tell you about the pressure she felt about like beauty ideals and everything else that she experienced from like, I don't know, like watching like TV, I don't know, what did you do movies, in 1952? Yeah. You know, whatever. So I think like those things have just existed, and now we're just constantly reminded of them.
Yeah, I think they're just in your face more than ever.
Yeah.
Do you feel like modeling, that part of your career, can't be good for like self-esteem and body image, specifically body image?
It was terrible for my body. It was terrible for my self-esteem. I totally I mean, I didn't even realize it literally until I was publishing the book, basically, and someone said, oh, like this is an essay about disassociating, and I was like, oh, and I like learned to do that so much, and that came from the modeling. Yeah, it's weird. It's definitely not, especially like, you know, once you gain a certain kind of, and that only honestly happened really recently. Like, I think people think like, oh, well, she got famous like at this year, so that's when everything shifted. But like, there was still so much criticism and so much kind of like, oh, you're not this way, or you're not that way, you're not good enough, you're not tall enough, you're not sexy enough, you're too sexy, or whatever, all these things all the time. And so it just made me like so hyper aware of the way I look and being perceived, and specifically my body. And yeah, so sometimes like when I would like post a bikini picture or whatever, it was almost like a weird way of like validating myself and of just looking at myself and like doing it my way instead of having like a man take my image and like me have no control over it. So there's like a lot of different levels. And then it was just like pure insecurity and like wanting that whatever external validation. But there were also ways that it was like me trying to kind of like take back some control and even just like look at myself honestly and like myself, you know?
I feel like we become susceptible to, again, promoting these unrealistic or unattainable beauty things. I don't know. Even when I was younger, like I would edit my photos or do these things that now I look back and I'm like, oh, I feel bad for the younger version of myself who felt like she had to do that. Yeah, totally. I'm very anti-Facetune these days. But like when I was 22, I remember the first time my friend was like, I was like, oh, we took a group picture and I was like, I look fat. And she was like, dude, and like pulled up the app and like edited my like leg. And I remember being like, what is that? And yeah. And it was like, you know, I mean, I would say that I was relatively good at not being like a crazy Photoshopper or whatever, but like totally like you have the option. You're like, oh, this photo would be so good if only like this part of it was different. So 100%. Who can blame you if it's going out to like millions of people anyway? You're like, well, I kind of want to put out the most perfect version of myself because people are going to be assholes anyway. Yeah. Well, I think also like at that point I was like building a career and an image in a way that feels different now, right? Like now I'm a little bit more like selective. No, now I feel more a little bit like less edited almost in some ways. I mean, I think I post less and differently. Like I'm not like, ooh, I look cute today, I better get a pic. Like I don't give a shit. I definitely did earlier on in my career because that was part of building a career. And now I feel like I'm just like, oh, whatever. But also I just mean like I wouldn't edit a photo in the same way that I did when I was like 23 or whatever. I meant more selective about like even what jobs you take. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I wasn't clear about that. Yeah. Do you feel like you want to get to a point where you say you're done with modeling altogether or you enjoy it?
I enjoy it now because I get to work with like creative people that I really like. And, you know, I almost feel like there was so many moments in my life where I didn't know what I was going to do. And I really like wanted to be able to do fashion and it felt totally impossible. And so I think now I'm just like, wow, I did it and I'm going to enjoy it. But yeah, I think at a certain point, I mean, I'll move away from it. It's funny. I thought that I was going to be after the book. I was like, this will be like a stepping stone, whatever. And then weirdly that kind of like, I don't know, just my career happened for a bunch of different reasons, I think, to kind of like pick up fashion wise. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to ride this wave. So
yeah. And I also think it seems like the ball's more in your court now.
Yeah. I have so much more control.
And more leverage.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about like you briefly mentioned this external validation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think everyone feels it. It's the reason I think social media is so addicting. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you are addicted to the attention? Like, do you talk about that with your therapist or something you explore with friends who are in a similar position of just like relevancy or being this object of desire?
No, I think that changed for me. I think I was completely. And then I think when I went to therapy and I realized how unfulfilled I was, it didn't feel as exciting to be relevant and to be like externally validated and to have like a million likes or whatever. But I mean, I write about it in the book, like checking, you know, how many likes I've gotten on a photo, like addictively, and like zooming into pictures of my face to try like judge what I actually look like. Am I actually that pretty? Am I not? Whatever. Like, yeah, that's totally is a part of my life. But I think as far as the like needing what I want, the validation I want is from like people to be like, oh, like I see her as this total thing, right? Like not just this like image. And that has happened. And that is so much more fulfilling like work in general because I'm using my brain and I'm thinking about things I care about and then connecting with other people about things I care about versus just like this like very one-dimensional thing that like represents something that isn't just even me. It's like this other Emily. So yeah, but I mean, no, I mean, when people talk to me about like social media, I'm like, of course it's like how everybody feels. It's like you have 100 followers and you're like, oh, this photo got 16 likes and that one got 32. Why did that one do better? You know, whatever. And that's like the same thing. It's just on the numbers are different, you know?
How does it affect your dating life? Like, have you dated guys who they felt overwhelmed by your success?
Yeah. I found that men
or emasculated even?
Yeah. I mean, I just like talked about this on my podcast and then the fucking line got like pulled out of context and blown up on the internet, which was fine. I was like, it's true because, you know, what I found is like, at least the guys that are attracted to me are like, oh, yes, like superwoman, like this woman who's like successful, hot, all these things, whatever. Like they say that's what they want. And then they're actually in the relationship and they're experiencing what it's like to be around somebody who has like a lot going on and a lot of whatever. And they start to get resentful. And you're like, but I thought that's why you liked me. Like, I thought that's what you liked about me was how opinionated I was and how, you know, I have this really big life. And yeah, they get emasculated and they get resentful.
Well, it's women. It's this idea that women can't be multifaceted.
Yeah.
And that you can't be the strong, independent woman. But it sucks when you're like, exactly what you're saying. Isn't that the reason you drew me in or you chased after me? And then once you have it, you kind of try to bring me down?
Yes. And that's been my experience pretty much across the board. I'm hoping that won't always be true, but.
Do you feel like you are drawn to a specific type of partner?
I was before therapy. Before I went to therapy, I think I definitely was. And now I feel like I'm not as much attracted to that same type of person. And like, it just feels way less specific.
What do you look for in a partner? Because you're newly single for the first time in a while.
First time ever, basically. I've like had boyfriends since I was 14. I was like a serial monogamous, like back to back.
That's how I was since I was 16.
So I'm like, that's something like I don't know. There's no like things that I regret, but I look back and I'm like, man, if you had just been a little less afraid, you could have like experienced things a little bit different. But also I really do think that I stayed in those relationships to be protective and like to not have to deal with what it was like to be single and like protect, like trust people and whatever. Cause even now I find myself like, I'm so guarded and like I can do that, but I just wouldn't have been capable of doing it before. What I look for in a partner, I mean, I like somebody who's very independent. Like I think that for me, like that's right now very important. Just because I do have like a full life. And so I want somebody who, and also because of what we just talked about, like my experience with men kind of like resenting you, getting emasculated. I'm hoping that, you know, dating somebody who has more of their own like confidence and life will help with that, preventing that. I look for like good-hearted people who are thoughtful. I like people who have good politics. I like people who, you know, I mean, are funny and
Similar interests.
Yeah, similar interests is important for sure.
Because I feel like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I don't know much of your dating history,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel like what I have seemed to gather
Mm-hmm.
is like you like a specific kind of cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're in a certain scene.
Mm.
And you seem, in my opinion, to have been more of the breadwinner.
In the past, yes. Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I'm being judgmental, but I guess I view them as a little more unserious. And I take you as like very serious as well as taking yourself very seriously.
Like other very serious ex was kind of serious. He was like he like went to Brown. He was like a philosophy major, and he like was like a child chess prodigy, but he was also like fun. But he like collected art and actually was a professional poker player. So he was like weird. He was weird, but he was like my other serious ex-boyfriend
that you were with for a long time.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to know if you wear the pants in the relationship mostly.
I don't. That's what's funny. I don't know. Gender's such a like, people I think have this idea of me as like super feminine in a lot of ways, and like I'm actually kind of not.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like, there's to me like at least the traditional kind of like hetero game you play where like you're like the little like, you know, dainty whatever. Like I'm not like that. I just talked about this in an episode for the podcast. It's so interesting. Like Susan Sontag wrote this piece where she's like, femininity is like inherently tied to youth, not just because of like beauty standards and whatever, but also because like we think that femininity is like innocence and like naivete, and like masculinity is like wisdom and whatever. So whatever.
Strength, life experience.
Yes. But yeah, I don't know if I wear the pants. What I like jokingly say to my friends is like, I'm verse. I'm verse. I like to be dominant in certain sometimes, and then other times I want to be like treated like a little baby, and it kind of depends on like where I'm at on a given day in a given moment, you know?
But for future partners, is that something where you want someone who maybe kind of won't replay these issues that have showed up in your relationships?
Totally. I really would like somebody who is like capable of taking care of me in the same way that I feel I'm capable of taking care of people.
Yeah, I wonder, do you feel intimidated by certain types of guys?
No, but I don't like a lot of men.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Just like don't like a lot of guys. So
like, do you go on dates and you'd get the ick?
Yeah. I don't go on dates unless I like don't think they're gonna be like that. But I don't know. Yeah, I can get the ick. Yeah,
I feel like I've been getting the ick so much recently.
Yeah.
I've been going on a lot of blind dates,
Mm-hmm.
and just I don't know what's wrong with me. I just feel like I'm at a point where I'm very happy to be single for the first time in my life.
I just started dating someone that I'm kind of like, so that feels different. But yes, if you would talk to me 4 weeks ago, I would have been like, absolutely. Like,
you're like, I need this time for myself, but now
oh my God.
things
no,
change.
I just am like, oh, well, he's kind of great. But there's I would be seeing someone and then all of a sudden like the way that they like walk would just like
Gives
I'd
you
be
that
like
feeling.
so but it's just more like I think I have noticed in a lot of guys entitlement in very small ways, like literally when they're at the restaurant, how they like expect the ketchup to be brought to them right away if they ask for it or whatever, just entitlement. And then that's like one thing that just like I just don't like. And I do see it even in like guys that you are like, how the fuck did you how did you learn to be this entitled? And yeah, just like I think masculinity can be really hard to like perform basically. And so it like makes men be kind of wild and like be kind of crazy. And you're like, okay, so you're unwell. Like what you're showing me is that you're unwell.
But is there not a part of that is attractive? Like, I don't know, for even like the alpha male.
Mm-hmm. I'm attracted to masculinity. It drives me insane.
It's the dance.
If you were like gonna like analyze me, my dad was like a very hyper masculine dude who's also like a painter. So I feel like, I don't know, the one thing, I don't like have daddy issues. I have a great relationship with my dad, but I will say like my idea of masculinity when I was very young was this like very, very traditional, like, you know, like plays sports, 6'2", like fixes everything around the house, whatever, but then also like is vulnerable and like makes art and whatever. And that's actually like super hard to find. And it's led me in some weird, strange directions. But yes, I am attracted to like masculinity.
So I feel like if you just met like some super nice guy who maybe would treat you amazing, do you think you would be bored?
Yeah, I need an edge. Like you have to be kind of like funny or
complicated.
Yeah, there has to be like layers to you for sure.
How long have you been technically divorced or separated?
Separated since June.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult to navigate being single again?
No, it's been fun, honestly. I mean, you know what? It has been difficult because I'm a mom and I'm really protective of my time with my son. And I'm really busy. Mm-hmm. So like honestly finding the time to like date and just feeling really tired a lot and then being like, why am I dating? Why am I like, I'm exhausted. And then just obviously the public element of it has been a little hard to navigate. And just like talk about like really having to not care what people think and like what they think is going on. And because people are so wrong all the time and I just have to kind of accept that.
Do you read what people say online?
I can't, it's hard to avoid it, honestly. Yeah. I don't like read comments, but I'll like see stuff on Twitter or whatever. Or honestly just like, you know, I'll like be on set and someone will be like, I saw that thing. Or on TikTok, I'll get like my own stuff and I'm like, fuck, I want to like I'm trying to unwind and look at TikTok and then I'm like, oh, that's a video of me or, you know, whatever. But yeah, it was just hard, like, you know, especially trying to like casually date and then like, you know, every time I'm photographed with someone.
Yeah, you're like, maybe I don't even want to fucking see this person again.
Yes. First of all, so that's happened definitely where I've been photographed with somebody that like I only hung out with twice or something. And then also just like, you know, if you're seeing multiple people at the same time, it's pretty brutal that like they wake up, they didn't hear from you for 2 days and whatever. Not that I like need to worry about them. I'm trying to get better at that. My therapist will tell you. But you know, that just like made it complicated. So it was very hard to kind of, and it just gave me a lot of anxiety. I would be like, should I just, you know, that part of it has been hard, but otherwise it's been fun. It's like the first time that I've been able to just be like, sure, well, why not? I'll go to dinner. Like why not?
Do you feel like casually dating in the public eye? Like, I don't know. I guess I haven't really checked out like public comments or anything, but do people slut shame you? If you're like seeing multiple people?
I don't know. I just don't read that. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I read that. I feel like there's this attitude of like thinking that I'm performing for everyone. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not performing for anyone. I live in New York City, which is a wild move, honestly, if you're famous, like, because it's just, unless you live in like a building that has like a private entrance, exit, whatever. I don't want to do that. I like living in real New York and not in one of those kind of buildings.
Yeah, you're saying you were walking around Chinatown today.
Yeah, I was walking around Chinatown wandering. And yeah, so then I made that decision, and then you get photographed, and it's like, it is what it is.
Have you talked about on your podcast publicly why your marriage kind of ended?
No, I haven't.
Is that just something you want to keep private because of your son?
Well, yeah, that definitely for my son. And yeah, it's like, it's still, we're not officially divorced. So
I didn't know that. Okay.
It's just even like, for privacy, but for legal reasons and all of that. But I think one day I will talk. I mean, I think like there will be, I am somebody who like, that's how I process things. I think I would probably write about it, if anything.
There is speculation that there was potential unfaithfulness. Is that something you'd feel comfortable exploring? Maybe not like specifics, but...
I mean, what do you want to explore?
I guess when I think about you possibly getting cheated on, that's so crazy. And I feel like a lot of my friends would feel the same way. Like, again, you're this contemporary ideal perfect woman. It's like, oh shit, if she could get cheated on, like, we're all fucked.
Yeah, it was so interesting that was like the reaction to that news, because I was just like, duh, men are trash, ladies. Like, and it doesn't matter who you are, how perfect you are, or whatever, whatever. Like, so I hope that.
But is there an element of then shame that comes along with that? Because you're like, oh, fuck, I feel this pressure to have it all.
I can't, like, the specifics of the situation are so kind of important to me to be able to really talk about this, and I can't get into them. So
fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair. Do you have any words of wisdom, or even how you had the courage to leave if it wasn't working for you?
Oh my God. I didn't have the courage to leave for a long time. I was like really, really unhappy, and I was like 100 pounds, and I just had a baby, and I was like I got really skinny because I was not okay. I tried everything else. I tried to take antidepressants. I was like sure that something was wrong with me. And, I think like so much of what I've learned of coming out of that relationship is like to trust your instincts, and gaslighting is a real thing. And, that can be, I didn't understand that it was actually going to be so nice to come back to myself and like return back to how I see the world, how I understand things, my instincts, whatever. And that's the advice I would give basically to somebody, is like, you'll be shocked how like much better how much easier life is. It is. But I think that like we have this, especially women, everything that we like, every piece of media we consume from the second we're born is basically this idea of like finding, a partner that completes you and validates you. And I do think that was kind of part of it. And plus I just had a child. So I was like really like wanted to, have that family and whatever. And so it was like especially hard for me to like totally walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like shocked you were able to. That, I think it takes courage.
I had like, I had lines, and I was like very willing to whatever, but there were just certain things that I was just like, I've always been this way. Like I'm a very like on and off person. Like if I will literally like sit with people that I love and friends, family, whatever, for so long, and then if there's like a line that's crossed, I'm like, okay, that was it. And it was, for me, that was like, it was so clear. And then it just became clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer, which was good, which was clarifying. And again, like I said, really validating, and helped me like come back to myself in a way that's like beautiful and positive.
How the hell do you navigate just a breakup in general when you have a kid?
I think the people don't know the specifics of whatever. So I can't talk about it, but.
Do you have advice for newly single moms out there?
Oh my God, I wish I did. I'm so tired. Like, I just want to be like, I know you guys must be so tired. I mean, it's funny. I've now talked to like a couple different newly single moms on the podcast, actually, Amber Rose, Julia Fox, whatever. And they both are in a place where they're like written off men. They've written off dating. They're like, I have no interest. And I'm like kind of waiting for me. I'm like, why am I not like that? I guess some part of me is just really like I'm tired because I do spend the extra time to like help me define who I am as an individual separately from my identity as mom or as like a professional in my career. And that means like being kind of a little bit more tired, but it also just like it actually makes me happier and is helping me kind of like again come back to myself. So that's what I'm doing. But some people I know, a lot of newly single moms are just like, why would I date? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, but this is like, that's what I'm doing. And it is helping me. So, and I like it.
Well, it also sounds like it's helping you figure out kind of what you want and what you don't want.
Totally. And just like being able to do that, I was such a pick me girl. And in such a like I said.
What do you mean by that?
I was just so, like I said earlier, I abandoned my my own priorities in order to be loved or to be chosen. Because not just romantically, but also even like with my career, right? Like I was like appealing to a lot of like powerful men essentially in order to like be advanced. And I just like totally abandoned my own boundaries and my own ideas of what was important. And now I'm super grounded in them. I've basically like curated my life exactly to how I want it to be. And it's almost hard to imagine somebody coming in and being additive and like bringing things to the table. So it's so much nicer to be able to like sit across from somebody and be like, really great, interesting person. Like, totally don't need to see them again.
Yeah.
You know, in a way that I didn't have that like power at 24. I was like very like, do they like me? What do they think of this? What do they think? I was so like in my own head and how I was being perceived rather than like remembering that I was valuable.
Yeah, I wonder, it sounds like maybe when you were younger, your self-esteem was more dependent on how you were viewed by these people. And now you've come to a place where it's like, okay, your relationship with your son, your relationship with yourself, your career, friends. Your friends, your family are the things that give you purpose.
Totally. And I just like, I think that there was just a point where I just wanted like people to like me. And now I'm like, it's totally okay if people don't like me. Like on a big stage, but also like guys.
Do you consider yourself a polarized person? Polarizing?
Yeah, totally. I'm definitely polarizing.
Why do you think you're so polarizing to people?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of do. I think like, you know, I get it. Like I'm talking about things that I perpetuate basically, right? Like I totally get it. But I'm just like, well, what do you want me to do? Not talk about these things? Or like you want me to stop like doing the thing that gives me this platform in the first place?
Yeah, like
and
start dressing Amish.
Yeah. Literally though. Yeah, and like that whole thing, like the reactionary kind of, I don't think it actually does anything either. Like if like women are just like, I'm not going to wear makeup and whatever, like so many women I see on TikTok who are or femme-presenting people who are like, I'm rejecting the male gaze, are still actually perpetuating it and playing into it in ways that like are so deeply layered. Feminism becomes this crazy mirror where people just like are like, you're a bad feminist, you're a good feminist, and I'm like, that's exhausting. So yeah, I think I'm polarizing in that way. I think like, I don't know. It's a weird, even just before I was talking about like things I cared about. I mean, sure, I was like always campaigning for politics, but I wasn't like talking about my experience and capitalism and patriarchy in the same way. I think I was polarizing still. But that was just sort of like more what I represented in the world than even like who I was. So
how do you keep distance between what haters are saying and your self-esteem?
Sometimes it feels super easy. It's weird. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, like people say things, you know, and then other times I'm like quite affected by it.
Is it dependent on what they're saying?
Yes. I think it's also literally just where I'm at and like how I'm feeling about my life in general. If I'm feeling like a good mom, if I'm feeling exhausted from work or overwhelmed or like, oh, I haven't done that thing that I needed to do. If I'm feeling like down on myself and then I see something, it lands, you know? I don't know. I've started to just realize sounds something, I don't know, but this is a new kind of thing that I don't think I've said out loud. But I almost feel like I like get it. I'm like, I know what it's like to be somebody who observes. Like, I know what it's like to be a follower and a supporter or like a fan, and like the way that celebrity culture functions, right? Like I'm also somebody who absorbs pop culture. If I hadn't been on the other side of being in the public, it would be really hard to understand the kind of like have empathy for those people, and also even understand the divide of like reality that, what the public thinks they're seeing versus what's actually happening. And I think I've just kind of accepted like people just aren't going to know me in the way that I want them to, even if I really, really try. So I'm just going to kind of continue to do my thing, and that's okay. Basically, I almost like have empathy for the haters. I'm like, I get it. I understand why you're saying that thing,
Well, it's also like, yeah, you're hating, again, a specific layer of me that is not the whole person.
Totally. And like, I also just a lot of the times think like, oh, if we sat down, you'd like me.
I mean, TikTok's a heinous place.
I weirdly think people are less vicious on TikTok than they are on Twitter.
Okay, Twitter is possibly the worst. I feel like it goes Reddit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Reddit is...
It goes Reddit, maybe Twitter. TikTok has been particularly pretty bad for me. Instagram's really nice.
Yeah.
I think it's because more people you don't follow pop up for you in spaces like a Twitter, Reddit, or TikTok.
Yes.
Whereas Instagram, it's very curated to exactly what you want to see. I told you,
I'll like be like unwinding and be like, oh, can't wait to watch
I know, and
TikTok.
then you pop up.
And then I see something like hating on me and I'm like, cool, okay. Like, good night. That doesn't help with like my bedtime routine. It's fine.
Do you feel like you're in a good place right now with your body image and social media's effect, modeling? I mean, we briefly touched on it. You didn't go too deep on there, but
yeah, I do. I mean, having a child is a wild thing for your body. I was like, everyone like thought I bounced back really quick, but like I didn't feel that way. I mean, I did lose a ton of weight right away, partly from stress, but it was just like it didn't feel like my body. Like I think I'm starting to just come back to myself and be like, oh, and it's a new body for sure. Like there's just things about it that are different post baby, and I'm like accepting those things and like also just embracing like this is the body I'm in, and like it's not going to be the same. And I think gaining weight for me in the past like 6 months was really huge. Like I said, I was down to 100 pounds in the midst of my breakup, and now I'm like 15 pounds up, which is like a lot on my frame, and it feels so nice to like have an ass and have a good relationship to food again. And like also I would say childbirth had a huge impact on just respecting my body for more than being an object. And then now just the labor I do of like picking up my son and like basically kind of using my body to take care of him it helps me. It's helped me come into myself and like love my body and understand it for more than just how it's perceived.
Is that something you've worked on in therapy?
Yeah, my relationship to my body is like a huge part of my therapy, just because so much of my anxiety would show up in my body. Not just the like losing weight when I'm stressed, but like stomach stuff. Like I had a lot of like there's like all those things of like
an IBS type
yeah
of thing?
I mean, I didn't have IBS, but like
stress,
all related to stress and
indigestion, all that stuff.
Totally.
The reason I'm asking so many questions about this is not to harp on the point, but I know that just dysmorphia around your body, I think, because again, yes, it's existed for forever with media and movies and magazines, and I'm sure even at certain points it felt worse in the early 2000s with like how pop culture was then. But now it's like you have these mirrors up to yourself constantly, like with a TikTok or Instagram, where you're constantly seeing yourself close up in a way that I feel like societally we never have before.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, yeah, then are we perpetuating these harmful, am I posting something that then is making a younger version of myself or a young girl out there insecure?
I mean, again, so like,
and the pressure to be perfect. Do you feel that pressure?
Totally. Not just physically, but like in every way. I mean, especially like being a mom, and there's this like Madonna whore thing we have in our culture, and I feel like I'm like trying to be so many things at once, and like people just don't like. And I mean, being like a single person who talks about sex and then also like is a mom, and then, you know, goes out at night, and then does a commencement speech, and then, you know, like has a podcast. Like there's just, people just don't like it. Yeah, listen, I hear you. I'm like I think about it.
How do you keep your sanity, I guess?
Well, I mean, I don't want to skip over your question about like perpetuating those things. I think it's a very valid point. I personally don't think that if I stopped posting Instagrams of my body that like the world would change. That's sort of like a big part of it. I have to say, like, I posted a nude picture yesterday that was like taken on set by these Italian photographers. Thanks. In my fucking wig that I was so committed to. I slept in it the other night. That's how much I was committed to it. So, but I was like super excited. Like, well, first of all, I sent them to my friends and I was like, do I even look good here? I don't know if I should post them. And they were like, what, bitch, basically? And like, shut the fuck up kind of thing. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll post him, whatever. And then I had this feeling of like, oh, I'm gonna get so much shit for posting these. Like, people are gonna be so like mad. They're gonna be like, oh, he's naked. Oh, she says don't objectify us, but then she posts this, blah, 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 whatever. I knew those things were gonna happen. But then I was like, man, I went through a pretty serious thing in the past year where I like basically didn't feel sexual and didn't feel good about myself, and post baby and all these things and whatever. And it's nice to see myself this way. And like, I'm okay with sharing it with the world. That doesn't mean that that's the only thing about me. And like, you know, 2 posts back was a fucking, you know, thing of me and my son, like doing whatever. And then there's like, you know, episodes of the podcast where I'm talking about things that I care about and whatever. And like, I'm okay. I know that the naked picture will be the thing that gets the most interactions, the most people will see. But, I'm okay with like that being, I'm not going to be so hard on myself and be like, you can't post this because like, whatever. It's the reality of my job. It's the reality of my body. Does feel like good, not just because I want a million people to like it, but because like it's a way for me to be like, that's right, I still got it, you know, and feel good about myself. And I just like, I don't know, I'm not gonna like make myself feel bad. It's like, again, I just liken it to getting dressed at night and being like, should I put on the low cut shirt? Like, oh, everyone's gonna think I'm a slut and that like I just want like men's attention. But like, if it feels fucking good, do it. The calculations that I think young women have to do all the time, or women in general, honestly, femme-presenting people, of like, how am I going to be perceived by every single little thing I do, from like what lipstick I wear to, you know, how tight my pants are or whatever. It's exhausting, and it's for women and for men, right? And I think just like one thing that I feel about my younger self, and I kind of like try to practice now, is just giving myself a break, you know? And I want that for other women. I've been so hard on myself like my whole life. And again, a thing I look back, if there was something I could have given myself advice in my 20s, it would have been to like not be so hard on myself. And I want that for femme-presenting people.
Do you feel like if you didn't feel as confident, even in these photos you posted yesterday, or 6 months ago when you said you were feeling great post-baby, you wouldn't post your body? Like, is there a distinction between feeling, like, do you ever post your body when you're not feeling great about it?
Well, when I was going through that time between like where I'd lost all this weight and I felt really bad about myself, I wasn't posting very much. And I mean, I don't know, take whatever you want from that, but that was true. And I also was like, the book had just come out and I was feeling really like worried about being criticized, but also separately from that, I just didn't like how I looked. I like didn't like myself. So there was I didn't want to like share myself with the world. So I don't know. That was a time when I was really insecure and I wasn't posting very much. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, when I feel like when I have moments of feeling insecure, I can trace back, like, when I post certain things. Like, if I'm going through a breakup, I'm like, yeah, maybe I need a little more attention to lift me up. So it's just interesting to talk to people and see how all our experiences are different.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, there was definitely, like, post-breakup, I was like, I didn't feel good about myself, but I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, like, post more, like, things because, like, I was kind of trying to send up the bat signal and be like, yo, I'm single.
Yeah.
And
thirst trapping.
Yeah, I was thirst trapping for sure. But now that's not how it feels now. Now I'm just like, this is out. These pictures happened. This thing happened. Da, 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 like, you know, and it feels like almost less. I've like stopped being so calculated about it.
Yeah, I guess like if you felt like you didn't meet the standard of beauty that you meet, would you be posting the same things?
No, I'm sure I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't have the career I had. It's so hard, like chicken or egg.
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's just to even think about those things sometimes makes me feel like I'm going fucking crazy.
Yeah, well, it's like Russian doll situation where you're just like each thing underneath. But yeah, I mean, again, like I do not claim to have the answers. I don't think that I'm like with how I'm living my life, I necessarily am like representing how all women should live or that like this is going to enact change. I like definitely don't think that. I just want to have a conversation around these things.
Yeah. And how do you feel like you're doing that with your podcast?
Well, interestingly, I've had like a lot of former sex workers on, and people who've worked in the adult film industry, and that's been really nice. Because I think that I didn't really like intend. I knew that a lot of sex workers and people who'd worked in adult film related to my book, but I didn't quite anticipate how much. And then I didn't anticipate how awful people were going to be towards them. Like I had Mia Khalifa on, and there's this clip where she's talking about how it's like really discussing that when older men date younger women and like what that means about them. And the comments on this TikTok video has like 10 million views are absolutely horrific, like discrediting her because of her experience in porn, even when I actually think that like makes her more informed because she lived this really specific experience and has this really unique perspective on like predatory men. And it just made me realize like how much our world hates women. I mean, I did know that before, but it's made me realize that even more, and just how quickly everyone's like, oh, this person's stupid, or, you know, this bimbo, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of made me want to double down on giving, you know, a platform to these women and femme-presenting people to be able to talk about anything they want. And I've had people on, like I had Chloe Cherry on, and I didn't agree with kind of like her perspective, but also like it was her experience, and people don't fucking take her seriously. So like it was just nice to be able to be like, I'm taking you seriously and I want you to talk about that. So I think that's one way. And then obviously in the solo episodes, I think just like exploring different ideas that are, you know.
I saw the backlash the Chloe episode got. Did you talk to her after the episode ever?
I didn't talk to her after. I did do I talked to Mia because Mia I remember
I saw on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, she texted me and was like, I just listened to the episode. I'm like having a really hard time. Da-da. And, you know, I felt really conflicted because when I listened to it back, my whole feeling is like, you know, I've been the guest on so many things before and have people like kind of grill me. And I'm so grateful that people come in and do the podcast. I didn't want to do that to her. And she's younger than me, and it felt like wrong. But then when I listened back, I was like, I should have pushed back more.
Oh, I have that all the time.
Yeah, and so I felt so I like re-recorded the intro and was like, hey, there's some things in here. And I like talked about why I had done the episode and that like there was going to be a follow-up episode. And then I did a solo episode where I basically talked about the ideas she talked about, played Mia's response on TikTok, and like made the episode kind of about how the privilege that was in the conversation she was having and the point she was making. And it was, I feel good about how I handled it. I think like next time, I'm very new to doing interviews. I have to be a little bit more pushy.
It's difficult. Also, when you're meeting someone for the first time in person, you don't want to be rude to them.
It's not even that. I mean, yes, definitely.
At least for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's part of it. But for me, fundamentally, it's like, I feel like it can be really disrespectful. And I'm like, want to be respectful and grateful. And in a world where a lot of these young women are getting so much pushback, I like don't want to be the person to like be like, oh, you came on my show, like, well, what the fuck, da, 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 And the truth is her experience with the porn industry, I mean, I don't know if she's always going to feel whatever, but she did. What happened was her reality, right? Like what Mia said is it's 1 in a bajillion and it's not the right thing to focus on, but that was her reality. She like was able to take her career in adult film and like build an acting career out of it. That I don't think that I think it happened because she's a thin white blonde woman for sure. And I think that like it's also a roll of the die, but that is her reality. So I wasn't going to disrespect her reality.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between like, how do you push back without being disrespectful? Yeah. And again, like how can we have an open conversation about these topics that are difficult and nuanced and we don't know the answers? Yeah. And also like a teachable learning moment for both of you.
Well, that was what was so hard. Like I have so many young women listening to the podcast. It's like my biggest demographic. And I got really anxious about like the messaging.
Even just putting it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard.
It was hard. And, my friend was like, come on, you're not having like a right-wing extremist on. You're like not giving somebody a platform. And I was like, totally. But I want to be responsible with the kind of messaging that I'm putting out. And it was hard. There was like a lot of like ethics were clashing kind of.
Do you feel like you go through a more rigorous process thinking about ethics with your podcast compared to the other things you put out into the atmosphere?
Yeah.
I guess, do you think about that even
with
social media?
I think when it comes to the ethics of like, what I post on social media, I feel like everything that I've talked to you about, it doesn't feel as specific of a message as like what Chloe was delivering. And I think I hope to be thoughtful about all the things I put out. That being said, I do think that, I have all these parts of my existence and my life. And, there was a minute where I was being like, okay, I'm not going to post anything that feels sexy in any way. And that didn't feel good either. So.
Yeah, I guess it's really just like bringing me back to the age-old question of the beauty standards. And like, I don't say this in any type of judgmental way because frankly, I post similar photos and have since I was 16 years old. Like I've posted full nude stuff. There's so many naked photos of me online. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm like, am I promoting kind of these unrealistic beauty standards that maybe someone who isn't like a skinny white girl is attainable. And so that's something.
But how do you feel like, what do you think about just it being your body and like how you look? Do you feel like you should cover up your body because of what it might represent?
No, definitely not. But I think there's so much that goes on behind closed doors, like even with my own body dysmorphia or my own eating habits, or like I'm saying when I was younger, face tuning. Like I almost felt like I couldn't meet this
your own standard,
my own standard of beauty. Or once that's out into the world, it's like, oh, well, this is how the public sees me, so I have to keep that up.
So then like what's the action? What do you think we should do?
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. That's why I'm asking you, like legitimately, because I don't know.
And like Mia Khalifa, for example, you asked her, she talks really openly about having nose job, right? That was part of that episode.
Nose job and boobs
her boobs and all that stuff. And so it's again like plastic surgery, I think feeds into that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I did this. I have a subscription episode for the podcast where people like send in audio notes, and there was this woman who was like, I love Mia Khalifa. I'm obsessed with her. I think she's so cool. But then I follow her and I get like serious body dysmorphia and get really triggered by her bikini photos. Like it super depresses me. I like hate my own body. And she was like, what do I do? Basically, like, how do I like, you know, deal with these two kind of opposing sides and feelings I have towards this person? And I basically was just like, I talked about the plastic surgery and how she talks about that, right? Like those, it's not just how she looks. Like she puts in tons of money and like has undergone surgeries and whatever to look like that. And then also like it's a part of her business. Like her posting her body is literally a way for her to survive and succeed. Mm-hmm. So remember that. And then also remember that like this is these are the 5 images you're seeing. You're not seeing her in the moments that like, you know, she doesn't look perfect or whatever, and you don't know what she's feeling either. So I think maybe what I'm saying is like having a conversation around understanding the politics of what goes behind these images and the reality of the world we live in can be helpful for helping to have perspective on them and helping us like not let them impact us in the same way that, you know, I think that they naturally do.
What about more transparency even? Like what about like do you feel like it would make a difference to people if you posted a photo where you're like, I feel like I don't look cute in this, or I didn't love my body in this moment?
I don't know. I wonder.
Versus like posting the things where you're like, I look really hot.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to post just things where I'm like, oh my God, I look really hot. Like I'll, you know.
No, of course. I don't want to reduce your content to that.
No. I don't, it's fine. You know, I hope to like.
But do you even feel the pressure? Like I'm talking about this pressure myself of having to meet these standards and ideals that I put out there for myself. Like at the end of the day, I'm the one that curated the image.
When I was talking about like post baby, like it was like a weird thing where I was like looking at old images of my body and being like, and taking new pictures and being like, is it the same? Is it not the same? Like what has changed? And like it was this weird kind of moment of using like my own content basically to like judge my new self. But that's just like that. They were also like not photos I necessarily posted. They were ones that were like on my iPhone, you know?
Do you feel like you put in effort and are, you said you don't like the word victim, but like a victim of the culture of wanting to, I don't know, putting in the effort to appear a certain way? Just appearance. Of course. Yeah.
Who isn't?
Totally.
Yeah.
I guess I just haven't heard you talk about that before.
I think that's hopefully I talk about it in the book a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You know, like even just kind of early understandings of like what beauty is and like being like, oh no, my nose is too big or I'm too short or this thing about me is, you know, not like this angle is literally not attractive versus this angle, and like knowing that and becoming like really good at it because it was basically like part of how I would make more money. So yeah. Totally, it's a part of my life.
I guess I think the pressure, just like celebrity culture too, and the pressure of like, and people not being forthcoming about having stuff done. How do you feel about that?
I talked about this on an episode of the podcast because I'm torn. Like, I think it's really cool that Mia is so open, and I love that like SZA talked about her like BBL and like whatever. I also think that like people are allowed to have privacy.
Totally, I agree.
So
with you.
I like feel conflicted about it. Basically, I think it's cool when women talk about it, but also I'm like, also you don't owe that to everyone. Like, I think there's this feeling of like celebrity, like, you know, you have to kind of like talk about every single aspect of your life. Like even with like boundaries I have about my divorce, I can tell people, like, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, people are, kind of feel like I owe them something. And I'm like, but I don't owe, you shouldn't even know that, but you do. But that doesn't mean I need to like fill in the story for you. Or people I've dated, they like want me to tell the story. And I'm like, yo, I want privacy. And so like a woman deciding to like, you know, do something to make herself feel better and whatever, like, you know, like all the hate the Kardashians get and stuff for not being more forthcoming. I'm like, I don't know how I feel. I don't know.
Okay. I have like, my feeling is if you're promoting a product under a false pretense, saying I got this waist because of a waist trainer or this supplement when you got surgery, that to me feels unethical.
I agree with that.
But if you're not promoting or selling something and lying about it, then I'm absolutely, I think it's so much more complicated for women because, again, there's so much of this deep-seated insecurity and this desire for perfection that's almost just put onto us when we're little girls. So it's like, again, I don't blame anyone who is.
No, I 100% agree with that. Totally. No doubt. But like, I don't know. Like, again, I said, like, I think like Mia's like stance on that is so cool. Like, I love that she's just like, no, I'm going to tell you exactly the lasers I got. She's like, it's a flex. The fact that I can afford this stuff it should be cool, you know?
I know, but then you're also like, okay, if you grew up in the Kardashians, for example, like you grew up in the public eye. So you can understand where the pressure to get certain things that they supposedly have gotten done. And then if other people aren't being open about them getting things done, you don't want to be the only one that's like, oh, well, I wasn't born perfect, so I had to pay for this nose or this ass.
Like, the culture around nose job check. Hello, like people really like younger generations are very much more okay with just being like, yeah, because like I think the truth is like even before like Bella said that she had like people like know who's had work done to it,
There's full Instagrams and YouTube videos that will post like before and afters.
Although I will say, like, I've been on those things and I'm like, if only I'd had that shit done, like, whatever. There's so sometimes they're not totally accurate, but then there are ones that you're like, come on. And like people are still denying, or not even just, they're not saying anything. But I think that weirdly, like, because we all just I feel like Gen Z is very much like, yeah, no, everyone's gotten work done now. So it's like just been accepted.
Yeah, but then I'm also like, is that promoting getting work done? And it's so normalized.
It definitely is.
And is that unhealthy?
I mean, it's just a new way of executing a beauty
labiaplasties, for example, are like the fastest growing plastic surgery for people under like 21, like teenagers are getting it done.
I mean, that's just a response to like porn, which is crazy.
It's sad to me. Okay, well, is there anything I missed that you want to follow up on?
No.
Okay.
I feel great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll link everything. You don't have to say that. And I'll link your book too.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. This was really nice.
Yes, it was nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
And thank you for answering all my questions.